And then he drops out after a catastrophic debate performance. And they set Kamala Harris up to fail. That was a 3-month campaign, and she was supposed to introduce herself to the American people. No wonder people were Googling, did Joe Biden drop out? And so...
No. You're saying 3 months wasn't long enough?
It was too long. It was long enough.
It was long enough.
If they had a primary...
It's not that they didn't have time to introduce. They met someone and they didn't like them.
If they had a primary, they wouldn't have picked her. And if they had, she would have been able to rough out those edges that then she basically has to start from scratch with a campaign team she didn't hire that didn't like her, right? It was his team.
In this episode of Real Time with Bill Maher, things heated up almost immediately. Maher found himself across the table from guests who leaned heavily into what many would label woke talking points, but he didn't sit back and nod along. Instead, he pushed back, and he pushed back hard. That's what caught so many viewers by surprise. Maher, who is often viewed as left-leaning himself, showed no hesitation in challenging ideas he felt crossed the line. What made the exchange especially striking was the political irony on full display. For years, conservatives were ridiculed as conspiracy theorists for questioning election integrity. Those concerns were brushed aside by the left, until now. Suddenly, some of those same voices are raising doubts about elections and even suggesting that Donald Trump somehow manipulated the process. Maher called out the hypocrisy in real time, slicing through the contradictions and exposing just how inconsistent those arguments sounded.
Everything the candidates, especially the Democrats, do to get voters annoys them. The constant texting. Did you get the texts like from Tim Walz every 5 minutes and like always begging for money and knocking on doors? We've got people knocking on doors. People don't want knocking on your door. Who in this day and age wants someone knocking on? Kids don't even like it when a phone call. That's like too much of a invasion of their privacy, which they don't care about. Who might emerge as the strongest Democratic opposition leader in the next Trump era? Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean, like Adam Schiff, he won right big. And
he won big. I like Westmore.
Westmore's fantastic. He's in Maryland.
Yep.
But who's going to be the one? Gavin Newsom, we have here in this state. He's already like called the legislature to. Trump hasn't done anything yet, but I understand the.
This was the problem. There was a 2014 study that showed that Fortune 500 companies were more likely to pick a female CEO if the company was struggling, basically setting women up for the big job, but to also fail. If they did well, fine. But if they failed, like, look, we have a female CEO while failing. And that's what I feel like they did to Kamala Harris. When Biden refused to step aside and not run again, he was supposed to be that bridge. He backed off on that promise due to arrogance.
Another major point of contention was the claim that the Democratic Party was somehow forced into selecting Kamala Harris as its candidate. Maher flatly rejected that idea. He pointed out that the party was under no obligation to choose her specifically. There were plenty of other options available. If the so-called political masterminds were truly as calculated as they claim to be, why would they rally behind a candidate destined to fail? The logic simply didn't hold up. The conversation then shifted to a broader theory that major corporations often appoint women as CEOs only when a company is already on the brink of collapse, effectively setting them up to take the blame. Once again, Maher pushed back. He argued that the simplest explanation is usually the most accurate. When companies are in crisis, leadership becomes desperate for change. After years of the same type of leadership, choosing a woman isn't part of some grand conspiracy, it's a gamble on a new perspective. Maher criticized how these identity-driven narratives oversimplify complex realities, reducing them to shallow stories that do little more than reinforce existing biases.
I think that is a very high degree of difficulty to put on anybody, and I do not think she is the perfect candidate. I tend to agree with Sarah that probably in a fully litigated primary, she probably would not have been the Democratic nominee, but we'll never know that. But I will tell you that, there's never been anybody who's had the difficulty of that situation, elevated that late in the campaign.
Why? Needed to run away from
Bill, I don't know if you know this, but the Vice President of the United States is basically shoved in a broom closet for 3.5 years.
I know.
You couldn't.
She was more popular in there.
Yes, well.
I mean, this idea that in a mass media age, that 107 days is not long enough to know somebody?
You are way overestimating the American people in terms of what they.
No.
You have someone like Donald Trump has become a universally known, understood, loved by some, hated by others over the course of being omnipresent for 8 years.
Decades.
Okay.
Barack Obama becomes president of the United States after running for 2 years as president, runs a 50-state primary, is on television, does dozens of Democratic debates, and by the time at the end of that, most people knew who he was. Most people.
Yeah.
You drop somebody into the middle of the top of the ticket, 3 days out, 3 months out. You are going to have to spend a lot of time trying to introduce yourself to the country while also being in a steel cage death match with Donald Trump.
As the debate intensified, Maher's guests attempted to double down, but it only made things worse. Every time they repeated their talking points, Maher responded with sharper logic and his trademark cutting wit. The harder they argued, the more their positions unraveled. By the end of the exchange, Maher had clearly taken control of the conversation. This was Maher at his best, challenging flawed ideas regardless of where they come from. Even when he disagrees with conservatives, he refuses to accept weak reasoning or blatant contradictions from the left. That willingness to call out bad arguments on all sides is what makes him such a compelling debater, and why this clip quickly went viral.
But I don't know if you ever watched this show, but I had Michael Douglas on this week.
Yeah.
At the top, we were talking about this, and he made a very good point that every other country in the world can do it in months, sometimes weeks. Why can every other country do it in that short a period of time? Are they all so much brighter than America? I don't think so.
Well,
mostly parliamentary. I mean, there's literal reasons, right? We don't have a parliamentary system.
I mean,
we also have a First Amendment. We don't make people campaign this whole time. The American people want to give them $20, and so they can afford it. I mean, small dollar donors are arguably the worst thing that's happened to our politics, as it turned out.
It's a small dollar donor didn't make $20 billion. No.
A lot of it.
Some of it, yeah.
And they represent about 2% of our country.
There's a few special PACs in there that saw $100 million plus.
Those are bad too.
I think you can believe that you could have shorter elections in America, but it's not like we don't know. In Britain, for instance, when you have a short election, it's not like you don't know who the leader of the party is for months and years before that.
You're either the person who's Googling the day before, did Biden drop out, or in a week. You know, did anyone in this audience not know enough about Kamala Harris pretty much after a week to make a decision? No. Yeah, people.
How are you going to enforce that?
We just get sicker of them.
How are you going to tell people they can't talk about politics?
What?
How with free speech that I know you love?
Yeah.
How are you going to limit people's ability to run for office?
I'm not limiting. We're not making a law.
Before closing out the segment, Maher outlined what he believes is the most straightforward way to begin fixing American politics: remove the money from the system. He suggested banning lobbyists, eliminating third-party donations, and forcing politicians to live solely on their official government salaries, no corporate funding, no side deals, no hidden strings attached. He admitted that the idea borders on fantasy, acknowledging that corruption almost always finds another way in. Still, his larger point landed hard: the current system grants far too much power to special interests. Meanwhile, his guests continued tossing around buzzwords and slogans, but Maher didn't let them slide. He dismantled their woke talking points piece by piece, leaving viewers with a clear reminder of why he remains one of the sharpest voices in political commentary. By the end, Maher came across as both brutally honest and clear-eyed, calling out nonsense wherever he saw it and forcing everyone at the table, left or right, to think more critically about how politics actually works.